Hello, parents, educators, and nerdy D&D fans. You have found our new home for Area of Effect, a talk show where we discuss how tabletop role-playing games benefit the whole family. We're currently in process of shifting all our old but golden episodes over to this new channel by posting a new episode every weekday until we catch back up to our new episodes. We would love your help getting this new channel up and running with a follow, share, or review. And thanks for joining us on our quest to bring more adventurers to the table.
Hi there, I'm Hugh from Poderation. If you like today's show, why not check out Dungeons and Dragonfruits, the bizarre, strange, and queer in every sense of the word D&D podcast. Join 5 friends as they laugh, learn, and adventure their way through the weird, wonderful world of Widdershins, where dragons hatch from trees and have adventures of all forms in every shape and size. Available wherever you can get your podcasts.
One of the first pre-written modules I ever ran as a DM was called Mercantile Missionaries. It's available on DM's Guild. You should definitely check it out. It's this really cute little story that happens in Baldur's Gate, and it's about hats. And I have run that module as an intro for at least 3 different groups. The teenagers just wanted to run roughshod over everything. And so when we got to the hat puzzle, I made it more difficult so that they would have to engage with the puzzle more. The adults wanted to be laid back and just wanted to experience the setting. And so the hat seller got to talk to them more. And then, most interestingly, the kids were the most bloodthirsty. And so when they fought the pirates at the end, they didn't let the Pirate King live in the same way that the adults did. And that's one of the joys of adapting these different stories to different groups, is finding the different story threads inside of them that work for the players at the table. I'm Ryan.
And I'm Allison, and welcome to Area of Effect, a podcast by the Kids Table, where we discuss how tabletop RPGs benefit kids and answer your questions about playing TTRPGs with the kids at your own table. All right. So, Ryan, today we're talking about adapting your game for your audience, particularly for children. And we have a couple community questions. The first one is, what do you think TTRPGs need to make them more accessible to a younger audience? This one is from Ben Carter, 1646 on YouTube.
Hey, Ben, thank you so much for that question. There's a lot of different ways that you can approach this. But what I would generally say, so Allison and I both have backgrounds in curriculum writing and adapting curricula for kids and teenagers. And the short answer is that there's no perfect module or curriculum or anything for any audience. Anything that gets written and published is going to have to be adapted because the writer is writing it for a specific context in a specific time. Even if they're trying to write it for a general audience, it doesn't work for every audience. The stuff that I homebrew and the stuff that we've put up on DM's Guild, like, it's great. I think you should check it out. But you are invariably going to have to change parts of it for the kids around your table or for the adults around your table. The short answer to Ben's question, what does D&D need to make it accessible for a younger audience? You need a good DM. You need somebody who is able to look at the material, figure out what the story beats are, figure out what the most important highs and lows are, and then figure out what's going to connect with the people that you actually have engaging in that story.
Yeah, even when I would have in my previous job, maybe a lesson that was written for 12-year-olds and I'm teaching 12-year-olds, even then, say I would have to change it because the 12-year-olds that are be in my classroom are different than the 12-year-olds in any other room. So I agree. I change everything. Sorry to the people who publish stuff out there, but I like to make my own. I like to make it feel natural and comfortable to me and the way that I like to DM, and I like to make it feel fun, challenging, but open to the interests and the play style of the characters at the table. That might sound more daunting than it really is.
Well, and I was just going to say that too. It seems like there's a lot of pressure there. And I want to encourage, especially first-time DMs, don't get daunted by that because especially in a TTRPG setting, adaptation happens pretty naturally if you let it. As you are reading through that module, even if you're not really sure who's going to be around the table yet, in the moment, You can make decisions. Like the players don't know what you've got behind the screen. The players have no idea. They might think that they do, but they don't. If you are in the middle of a battle that doesn't seem to be working because it either feels too hard or it feels too easy, fudge things. You can fudge things behind the table or behind the screen. That's okay. If you are in the middle of a character interaction and you are and they are starting to ask questions that have nothing to do with anything that's on your paper, shut it down. Figure out what else in the environment can stop that question from happening. There's
Or
it's
you could be like Ryan on the kids table and have your player randomly ask for a bedtime story and come up with a brilliant, beautiful story.
yeah, oh my gosh. Okay, but see, here's the thing. Like that story wasn't a real story. I straight up stole that from Aesop's Fable.
You
Like
just changed
so
the lion to a dragon.
I just changed the lion to a dragon. Yeah, there's a fable about the lion that gets a thorn in its paw, and the mouse goes and takes the thorn out of the paw, and the lion's very grateful. I literally just rehashed that for the kids' table, and that's something that you can do too. Like the people who step up to DM tend to be the ones who like telling stories, and if you like to tell stories, you are going to tend to have stories in your back pocket. And you might think that the stories that you already know don't have anything to do with the story that you're telling at your table, and I can tell you that you are wrong. You can be in the middle of a fantasy setting and you can include a story that you've cribbed from something like Mass Effect, and your players will never know. So just don't be afraid to make it your own. Don't be afraid to look at the stuff that's on the page and go a different way, because Ben's question is about accessibility. And the great thing about TTRPGs is that the table is by definition accessible. It's a level playing field for everybody that's there. So if your question is in terms of mechanics, there's a lot of math in something like D&D. Fifth edition especially has a lot of rules. You as the DM can be the one that holds all of that so that your players don't have to. You can be the one that's not just adjudicating things, but helping them to know what their roles are going to be, or helping to make things simpler on the fly. It lives in you so that it doesn't have to live in the players, and that's what makes it accessible.
Yeah, and one of the ways that Ryan, you started doing this and I stole from you is to have, when we're playing with children or new players who like the character sheet is very overwhelming to them because it has a lot of information and a lot of numbers. We, as the DM, have the full character sheet behind the screen, but we give the new player or the child a simplified, shorter version of the elements that they need to know the most or that they'll use the most, that are the most helpful to them, and then we hold the rest of it. For example, if the character on their sheet just has, a sword attack and persuasion is their best ability, but then they want to climb a tree. They don't have athletics on their sheet, but the DM has their sheet behind the screen, so they can say add a 2 to that roll. And that makes it feel a lot less overwhelming and a lot more approachable for new players, I think.
And that's different sometimes from the way that adult tables work and the way that we see like the professionalized actual play online that we all like to watch. The DMs are much more rigorous about making sure that the players know their character sheets, the players know the rules, because they're playing like at an expert or a master level, right? It's not an adversarial relationship necessarily, but if the player forgets that they can do something, the DM's not going to remind them because they are taking that as the character not knowing how to do something, right? When you're playing a home game, especially when you're playing with children, it doesn't need to be that professionalized. It can be very simple. And it can be much more collegial and much more collaborative. Some of us came up playing D&D in the 80s and 90s where the DM was the bad guy, the DM was the antagonist, and it was up to the players to beat the DM. Your table doesn't have to be like that either. That's an accessibility issue too. Make sure that the kids that are at your table feel comfortable, feel safe. And one of the ways that you can do that is making sure that you're the one holding the difficult parts, and that they get just to imagine and create and tell the story that they want to tell, and you're the one who gets to put the guardrails on it.
And the story that children like to tell is usually related to whatever their interests or their like little fandoms are
Yep.
connected to. That's one thing that I love to do with kids, is to find out what they love. Like my daughters love mermaids right now, so we're all our D&D stuff revolves around mermaids. Even when we play our journey story in the car, it's usually around mermaids or something like that. But if I had a kid that was really into animals, I would write a homebrew campaign, that was more about animals. I would tailor it to whatever they already like, to imagine the world that they already enjoy imagining themselves to be a part of. And I like to expand upon that, elaborate on it, add new little elements to it, so that we're really imagining the world together.
Yeah, that Nicole had a really a good point about that when we talked with her last time. I've been thinking about it ever since we talked with her, where, one of the ways that she adapts for her very young children, there are no player character deaths. And so in order for that to work mechanically, there has to be some sort of healing mechanism. And so there's a magical unicorn that will just sometimes appear in battle and kiss their boo-boos and make it all better. And I think that that is brilliant. That is absolutely a way to make it accessible for a younger audience. Like, is healing unicorn a spell in D&D 5th edition? No. Is just randomly healing your character something that you're supposed to do in D&D 5th edition? No. But it doesn't matter because it works for their table. So the fundamentals of adaptation are figuring out what works for the characters around your table. When we're doing it with curriculum, we have to pay attention to the goals of the curriculum, the lesson plan, that kind of stuff. When you're telling a story, that's all that matters. You only care about the story. And so maybe you're playing in a sci-fi world and your daughter loves unicorns, or your daughter loves mermaids. There can be mermaids in sci-fi land. Why not? You're making up the story. And that's what it fundamentally comes down to. You're making up the story. So whatever you can do, whatever you want to do to make it more accessible for your kids, go for it.
Yeah, and if your 3-year-old's character dies at the table, are they going to want to keep playing D&D? Maybe not. So
Nope.
to me, the goal is to make sure it's an enjoyable time and they want to keep doing it with me. So whatever I need to bring to the table to add that, whether it's the element of safety, or maybe for an older child, maybe a little bit of that element of risk can come into it because that's actually more enjoyable to them. So you have to kind of read your audience. One of the other things that I think is really important, our third rule on the kids table, is when the game stops being fun, we stop playing. Because kids can get overwhelmed. Kids can have temper tantrums and fight with their siblings at the table, or not like how something went. And why force it when we're in that space? If we need to take a little break, do a little emotional reset together, and then come back to the table, or maybe not, maybe wait a day or two before we come back. I think that's totally developmentally appropriate to kind of keep a tab on that and be willing to pull the plug, at least temporarily.
Because you can't adapt your way out of developmental issues. That is another thing that you need to say. Your
No.
adaptations, no, I mean, as much as you really want to, your adaptations have to be structured around those developmental issues. So if you have a 4-year-old, you're going to have a meltdown at some point. Like, it's just going to happen. You can do as much adapting as you want. You can do as much adjusting for skill level and age and for everything else. And eventually you are going to have a meltdown, because that is the job of a 4-year-old, to process the world and then get overwhelmed by it. And that's okay. So don't be discouraged too if your adaptations don't seem like they are working. You got to make adjustments on the fly all the time, but also remember the developmental stages that you're in and the kids that you have around the table, and just know that when things seem to go wrong, that's sometimes when the best lessons are happening. So just remember, it's a game and it's supposed to be fun. And if it stops being fun, you can stop playing the game.
And I think that adapting on the fly is something that seems intimidating before the game when you're like trying to prep, because obviously that's nothing you can prep for. But I think that's what really makes a DM the next level of expert, or the best kind of DM that they can be, is being able to read your audience and how they're feeling about what's happening at the table and adapt what's happening to match accordingly. Like, did you have this beautiful long role playing sequence, but is your 5-year-old getting really fidgety and really just wants to hack something with a sword? throw it out
Mm-hmm.
the window. That's one of
Yep.
the things that as parents or adults with kids in our lives, we have to be willing to humble enough to get rid of the things that maybe we wanted to do and focus more on what's going to make your players have the best time possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes you got to throw that elf monologue into your back pocket and it comes back 2 years later, but maybe now's not the time.
So, as a person who was myself very intimidated by the idea of DMing, I have found that DMing for my own children or the kids that I interact with regularly in my life is much less intimidating. So, if this sounds like a big hurdle to you to adapt a campaign to your audience and be willing to change things on the fly, when you're doing it with your own kids or the kids you interact with, you can read them much easier. You have more grace for them. They maybe I think, have a little more grace for you. I've found that it's really the easiest entry point as a DM, anyway, just because you're used to sort of DMing with them all the time in real life. And now
Parenting is
you're
just
just doing the
DMing,
same
man.
thing. It really is, right?
Yeah, it's DMing without knowing what the rule set is.
Oh, great. If somebody wants to publish that rule book, I will buy it from you.
Yeah, no freaking kidding. Yeah, see, the thing is that DMing seems really intimidating, especially because, again, we have some of these professionalized DMs out there who are fantastic storytellers and amazing to watch. And how could you ever live up to that standard? And the point is that you don't have to, right? Your table doesn't need to look like that. How you tell stories at bedtime, that can be the way that you tell stories around the table too. And the more that you do it, the more you get comfortable with it too. I've been teaching for more than 20 years. So when I stepped into being a DM a couple of years ago, it felt like coming home. It felt like stepping into a role that I'd always been doing because in a certain way I'd been telling stories with children for years and years and years. If that's not your job, that's okay. It doesn't need to be. Your job is just to be present for your kids and for the people around your table. And I promise you, if you have invited them to the table and they have come to sit down with you, they're going to have fun. They're going to love what you do. It doesn't matter if you have the ability to do 17 different types of voices and you can do a British accent and a Welsh accent and know what the difference is and that you've memorized the whole script and know all the rule set. Like, it doesn't matter. What matters is that they came to your table because they wanted to be there. Let them honor that and it'll be okay.
Listeners, we'd love to answer your questions about playing TTRPGs with kids and youth too. Just visit the Kids Table D&D on YouTube, Instagram, or Facebook and leave your question in a comment or direct message. And your question just might be answered by Ryan, myself, or even an expert like Nicole on a future episode. Happy playing!
Thanks for listening to Area of Effect. Be a part of the ongoing conversation. Follow us on Instagram at the Kids Table D&D, where you can DM us questions that might appear on a future show. And check out the Kids Table D&D on YouTube to see how we include kids and teens at the table. Brought to you by the Kids Table, because when kids are at the table, everyone wins.
Hi there, I'm Hugh from Poderation. If you like today's show, why not check out Dungeons and Dragonfruits, the bizarre, strange, and queer in every sense of the word D&D podcast. Join 5 friends as they laugh, learn, and adventure their way through the weird, wonderful world of Widdershins, where dragons hatch from trees and have adventures of all forms in every shape and size. Available wherever you can get your podcasts.
Did you know that playing D&D can have just as many benefits for families and students as playing sports? This is your friendly, nerdy podcast host and D&D mom, Allison. Area of Effect is a show where we discuss how tabletop role-playing games benefit the whole family. As former educators, my co-host Ryan and I interview experts like TTRPG game designers, educators, psychologists, and more, as we give tips to help you bring the adventures to your own table. Check out Area of Effect wherever you get your podcasts.